I hope you guys at the back can actually see me and hear me. I'm going to use the podium. All right, thank you. So, well, that was a super interesting conversation that the gentleman had. And I thought it was a problem that most of us have in our, current day world and how we're defining back to work. The topic that I'm going to talk about, like was introduced, is prioritizing transformation and its impact on business. And if I ask, folks in this room by a show of hands, how many in your organizations are going through transformations? Can I actually see a show of hands, please? Well, yeah, close to about 60–70% of your organizations are going through some change. What does transformation really mean? Transformation, to me, is change. To bring in, solutions or whatever you're developing faster, quicker, better, and cheaper to the market. There are many, many aspects of transformation, and I think we've seen a lot of this in the last couple of years because of the, the great attrition wave, and I'm sure we're going to see this for a little longer because the changes at the CXO levels, right? We've had a lot of changes of CEOs and CIOs, and every time there's a new gentleman in the seat or a lady in the seat, the question or, the top topic of conversation is let's transform the organization. And that has its own, plus the pros and cons, and I'll talk through a lot of them. But today, I thought I'll share my experience of what transformation is all about and how you prioritize transformation in our respective organizations. And this is, based on some of the learnings that I've had, going through in a few of the positions that I've held. So transformation has four components, in my view. The first, of course, being business model. The second is business processes. The third is technology or domain. And last but not the least is what the gentleman just spoke about, which is people and culture. And I think that's superlatively important. And how we kind of go through that and go about that as we transform organizations is really, really important. When I speak business model, there are multiple aspects of business models, right? I mean, if you look at a retail industry, it could be about supply chain, it could be about distribution network. If you're talking about banking, it could be about, the relationships with the issuers or the relationships with the merchants and so on. But those are not aspects that I want to talk about today. And when I spoke about CEOs coming in, a lot of times transformation has to start from within the organizations. So it's really about looking into your organizations, and most of the conversation that I'll have today is about that aspect. So when we talk about business models, it's about looking into the organization in terms of how you are structured. I hear that quite a few folks here from GCCs, right? And I hate to use that word because it was started off as global capability centers. But today, I think the centers developed in India or developing in India are more extensions of these international organizations. And a lot of times we still hear these words of offshore and on-site, which I think, should be banned, I guess, as far as India is concerned, because as I said, it's really extension of capability. And why am I speaking about this? One of the changes that needs to happen as far as business models are concerned is how you as an organization are set up. Are you a product-driven organization vis-a-vis somebody who's just looking at low-cost labor and labor arbitrage? And I think that's the change we need to make. It's probably not so much of a problem for some of the startups and the guys that have end-to-end capability in India. But the so-called GCCs do have the issue, and that continues to bug them, because the moment you go and ask and say there should be a product owner or somebody owning an end-to-end product in this part of the world, the answer that you get a lot of times is the capability to define product is really not there in this part of the world. I think that's again a myth, and I think many of us should go through those conversations in our organizations, because whether it's retail, whether it's banking, whether it's, agri-tech, health tech, whatever industry we talk about, many of them are super advanced in this part of the world, and I think we do have, the right skill and capability to have an end-to-end product in the country. And why is that very important to organizations? When we talk about the great attrition wave or whatever else, I think it's very, very important for people to rally behind that one product that is owned in the geography. And that is the only thing that can counter attrition, because it's no longer compensation. It's about great things that you can do as a team in the company. The second, so I think it's very important to define that in terms of, do you have two in a box of product and tech ownership in the region? And that improves many other things like work-life balance, because you can actually do a lot more sitting here. The second of business processes. Again, as I said, it's going to be an inwardly looking thing. So what is very important as you set up these product, a product organization where you're looking at end-to-end product? It's really important to have measurable criteria that you can come up with. And it is important for product to see that, because some of the problems that we've seen during transformations is the cost overruns, because tech and product are probably not working together on delivering some of those solutions. And when you talk transformation, again, if you say there's a lot of change and there's a lot of legacy that you need to bring back into systems and deliver on those, I think product doesn't necessarily understand, the hows and what. So it's important to have that two in a box, tech and product, really working through development of solutions. And I've seen that work really, really well in many organizations. And by tech and product, I don't just mean roles like a business analyst sort of role, but I'm actually talking about somebody owning end-to-end product in this part of the world. And business processes, it's important to actually be very agile. We have this waterfall model, so moving away from waterfall to agile. And if you have, say, 7,000 odd applications that you're dealing with, and as many Scrum teams in your organization, it's very, very important for somebody at the top of the house to be able to see how each of these areas are performing. So a very, very well-defined criteria in terms of dashboarding, in terms of how you're doing with respect to story points, how deliveries are happening. You're not developing a feature and that's sitting with you because somebody, that is in the ecosystem where you have a dependency has not released. I think that's huge amount of cost. And to sit with legacy for too long is also huge amount of cost, because you don't have too many people that understand legacy in your system. So it's really important that all of this comes out through your dashboarding, and it's called out for every product, saying this particular product has this many applications that are still running on legacy platforms. Just so much of modernization has happened. And it's not for calling out somebody, but it's important for organizations to see the sort of cost it's going to take you to move from legacy to modern systems. So I think, agile practices is very, very important to see how an individual is performing and how a team is performing and how the organization is performing constantly, and how you're benchmarking with respect to bringing in the right kind of modernization into your systems. The next one, which I think is super important, again, in the current day and age, is technology and domain. And it could be many, many aspects, but in today's day and age of hyper-personalization that all of us want, which is you want to shop from the comfort of your kitchen, perhaps. Somebody wants to shop from the comfort of their car. Somebody wants to shop from the comfort of their home, really, and various parts of their home. So it's extremely important for us to understand these customers. And so data, I think, is going to be the most important aspect that we need to learn to deal with. And again, the previous conversation was all about the hybrid model and work from home and things like that. But again, there are lots of vulnerabilities that are brought into the system, and that's been one of the concerns that we have too as we build out on data. Because again, when you're shopping, you probably have a lot of data hubs, and it could be to third-party and fourth-party, applications that or data centers that your application is going through to complete the process, and there could be additional vulnerabilities that come in. The number of endpoint devices too are huge, and that's another aspect of bringing an additional vulnerability into the system. So data and data protection, according to me, is one of the areas that you really, really need to focus on. The next one is architecture. And that's been there for a while, the architecture first view of the world. And when I mean architecture first view, it's not just about architecting, a few of the vertical systems really well, but when we talk transformation, it's way, way larger than that, because you want the entire organization to be excited about what you're going to do and what you're doing, right? So it's important to templatize architecture, where every engineer in the organization is really talking about how to do something, how to build out a system, how to componentize, legacy or, and build those microservices. How do we manage test data, for instance, and a whole lot of things. So I think the architecture view of the world and first view of the world is super important. So if I look at the last couple of years, these two have been paramount in terms of, for organizations: data, predictive analytics, and architecture. But in the last 2 years, from 2020 onwards, what has really happened is cyber has come in, right? The whole work from home thing has actually increased vulnerabilities 600%. That's a substantial increase in terms of guys trying to hit your network, sitting dormant in your network, or, in retail, there are a ton of other frauds that we actually see. Not just the credit card and things like that. So cyber and the investment into cyber has actually become substantial, and how do you kind of work through data protection, how do you work through countermeasures, to ensure your network is protected. And just to give you a view of the numbers there, right, in terms of just the amount of breaches that have happened, or it has cost in the last many years, that itself amounts to $115 billion. And the cost of a single breach of a data record is close to about $160+ per data record. And that has been going up 12% year on year from 2020. So large organizations, I think we really have to think through many of these aspects as we talk about transformation and actually prioritize them. Cloud is another big one, because cost has been one of the drivers for looking at cloud. And as I said, cost per transactions or whatever is one of the important aspects as you look at transformation. And so, having a healthy mix between on-prem as well as, public cloud, and the choices that you need to make there becomes superlatively important. Infrastructure on demand is the in thing, and something that all of us have to look at. And some of these are not just for the large organizations, right, who are the elephants and the large behemoths, and us trying to make those elephants run, but it's also for these small entities and the startups, which actually need to bring in, I think, a lot of sustainability as they want to scale up their solutions. So you can have, a one-off great solution that you've created, but then if you really have, to be able to deliver that to large organizations, you need to bring in some bit of, rigor into the way you do things. So I think, transformation is really important across the board. The last aspect of transformation, and I think what most important really, is people. How everybody in the organization is able to rally behind change that you're talking about in the current environment when there is these changes of CXO positions. So there's a lot of distrust in the organization. There's a lot of transformation fatigue in the organization as well, because every second person comes and talks about transformation and how he or she is going to change the organization from what it was. And I don't even know if that should be, the thing that people should talk about, because, it's more about looking inwardly and looking for a few aspects that you probably need to bring in. So it's really important. And like folks said, it's not the Gen X folks like all of us. You're dealing with the millennials and the Gen Zs, and they'd like to see a lot more things in terms of time boxing transformation and really saying, these these are the things and this is the time period that it's going to happen in. I think that's very, very important. The second is a lot of conversations on transformation and the changes and the benefits that it's going to bring in is important for this community, because they'd like to know why we need to change, right? And the explanation of that why is superlatively important. So sandboxing anything that you're talking about, it could be a new solution, if you're talking infrastructure on demand, or whatever it is, I think these guys would like to understand why. And it's also important as you, work through this. Somebody spoke about innovation, and I think, again, like transformation and like change, that's another thing that really, really needs to be in terms of, is the organization thinking forward? Now, one of the stories, I think, in the recent times that really, really caught my attention, and I thought that was a superlative or an iconic expression for, transformation, where the entire organization rallied behind this, was what Steve Jobs said many years ago when he was bringing out the iPod. He said, 1,000 songs in your pocket. I think what better way can you actually get the entire organization to rally behind a certain product that you want to bring to market than something like that? So organizational transformation is way more than coming up with a top-down approach and saying this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it. It's really about ensuring everybody is in the organization is actually rallying behind this particular story that you're talking about. So to me, these are really the four aspects of any transformation across any organization, big or small, and with specific focus on the business models, the business processes, people and culture, as well as technology and domain. And you can address, the focus. Now, somebody says, how do I prioritize, one to the other? It's really important that you have all of these going together to a major extent. And based on the budgets and whatever else you have, I think it's important to take maybe pieces of each one of these, but you really need to work through all of them as you go through and define any sort of transformation. So that's about all I had today. It's really about calling out what transformation is and what we need to do within our respective organizations and how we can probably change them to the extent and take them to target state with some of these areas if we focus on some of these areas. Thank you, and I can take a couple of questions if you have any. Oh yeah, before I take questions, I actually wanted to congratulate NASSCOM on having the translator here for the abled. I thought this was an amazing initiative, and thank you guys for that. I mean, I've not seen this before, and I think this is superlative.
Thank you for the...
I thought right back at me.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, madam. My question is, when you are talking about prioritization of these technologies, right?
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah. Are you able to hear now?
Yeah.
So my question is that what are the parameters that you are using for prioritizing, right? Because see, whatever gets measured gets optimized, right? So how do you figure what are the things that you are measuring and how are you going to prioritize? Are you looking at productivity? Are you looking at safety? Are you looking at like the livelihood and how do we retain the jobs? Are you looking at reskilling? Are you looking at sustain? There are so many metrics, right? Which are the top maybe 5 metrics that you are thinking about in terms of prioritizing?
So, well, I think the first two that come to my mind, and all of what you've called out are absolutely right. The first two that really come to my mind is, a product hitting the shelf at a time, because those windows of opportunity that you have, whichever sector, I think are superlatively small. So it's really about, are you able to target a product at the right time so that you're able to, take on that opportunity window. I think that's very important. Now that requires many things, right? Skilling of people is definitely top of mind in terms of for any transformation. I think creating a culture plan is very important because you need to have people that are available, to be able to work with you through that transformation. Budget's another big one, right, in any organization, because you need to cut the cloth based on the money that you have. And transformations are expensive. There is also a bubble cost associated with transformations, because you're taking on legacy and then you're also trying to change things, and both of them go hand in hand for quite a bit. So there's quite a bit of bubble cost that you have. And so it's very, very important to tread very carefully. And none of these happen in 6 months. They could be multi-year journeys that you actually go through. So I think it's really important on, using your money right, prioritizing, the features that you want to bring in, looking at the market window, seeing what your lowest hanging fruit really is as you kind of work through transformation. And everything is important, all of that you called out are important. Yeah. Can somebody have the mic here, please? Actually, can't hear you. I think something's working.
Hello.
Yep, can hear.
Wonderful summarization, Sirisha. I saw the JC Penney booth, and one of the things that intrigued me, and there's a lot of transformation behind, which is not visible, from outside, is the product where you've kind of taken customer interaction as part of the process of how they consume or buy, the beauty products, right? That you put your picture and then you see it and then you buy it. Now, there are many such brilliant ideas that come about, and for a larger successful organization like yours, often the traditional culture of saying no to any idea must be coming in the way of accepting such ideas, right? So how do you prioritize and how do you involve customers in the process of your transformation? Because with Gen Z especially, there are so many things that happen, and there will be many startups who might disrupt and do that, while that idea might be there in your team also, but you might have rejected it. Right? So there are wonderful things that you are doing, but how do you prioritize those things also when it comes to some new things like this?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think you should never say no to any ideation across the organization. So we've set up an innovation lab, and we really want people to ideate. We run these hackathons, and we really want more and more ideas coming in all the time. And when I saw HoloWorld and I saw some more of the AI and IoT, demos outside, I thought all of them were relevant to spaces like us. But the good question is, how do we use a lot of this and try to create business value from them, and what is and actually coming up with a value for that business solution that we can provide to market. So I think it's very, very important for organizations large or small to really look at what's happening around, because the customer behavior has changed. Customers want, say, real-time everything. There are senior citizens who can't come to the store, so we'd like to take the store to them, right? So I think the use cases are many, many, but we will have to evaluate those based on revenue opportunities in each one of them, like any other business. But I think it's important for us to keep pace with everything that's happening. And so, when we come into, say, a startup festival, what we are looking at, and I think you pointed that out right, there seems to be a syndrome in large organizations of not invented here, and we'd like to build everything in-house. But I think we need to build those healthy ecosystems where we partner up with this. We come in with a certain domain knowledge, and then I think we need to go out and reach out to everybody out there that can partner up with us so that we can create better solutions. But business value is super important as we look at it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We're just in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a panel again. Ma'am, we request you to please accept this gift from NASCOM. Thank you so much for being here with us.